So if you list out all those cons, yeah, you can make a list of a whole lot of cons, but on the pros side, it's this giant one word response of purpose. Purpose. That is your purpose in your heart from the time you were a little boy. That's what you've been wanting, and that's what you've been looking for. So on the surface, it might not seem like that great of a deal, but you will really find who you are as a man through sanctity of marriage and fatherhood.
Hey, hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Deeper Podcast. And today I'm here with Ryan King, who I know from Instagram as the Wisdom of Kings. And he is somebody I've been following for quite some time. He writes really powerfully about marriage, about manhood, as he likes to call that, about fatherhood, about leadership, and is a really beautiful imprint to me about what marriage can look and feel like and what fatherhood can look and feel like. So I'm really excited to have Ryan here today on the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you, Sophie. I'm happy to be here. It's an honor. I remember when I followed you first, back when I had like 3,000 followers, and you were releasing something. And I remember I followed you, and back when I had a really small page, and when you followed me back, like 6 or 8 months later, it was like, all right, I'm making it. Yeah. I'm getting there.
You are. Yeah, I remember I was scrolling back through our messages, and I saw one of your messages was one of where you were expressing respect for my work. I was like, I look up to you. This is really sweet. For people who don't know who you are, many of my followers will know who you are, but can I ask you to share a little bit about what you are creating in this world, what you are bringing to this world? Because I think it's very specific and powerful.
Yeah. So what I've found to be really kind of unexpected was I didn't know any of this world existed. I'd never read a marriage book. I'd never listened to any of this podcast. I'd never heard of the word polarity. For me, I was kind of a fairly passive consumer of social media. I'm a big reader. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen I'm a loner. I like to do my thing and read, and I don't really like to get out into the world. But the thing that I noticed as I was scrolling social media was you have these terrible examples of men that women have talked about publicly, As a man, that's really hard to sit and watch because it's like you feel like you're getting labeled along with these types of men. And that really bothered me. And then the men that I did see try to make idols of themselves. And so I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do when I started writing on Instagram. It was originally going to be the Wisdom of Kings was going to be the name of a book I was going to write to my sons. So it wasn't like, oh, look how wise I am. It was the Wisdom of Kings was designed to be like our family lineage wisdom. And I was going to write to my boys, because as a father, I've got 2 sons, they're 12 and 14. As a father, I've always been really concerned about if something were to happen to me, how are they going to be okay without me as men, as fathers, as husbands? And so I wanted to have a record that if I were to pass away, here's the wisdom of our family, kind of like the book of Proverbs for our family and our values. And really the only thing I had in mind when I started my Instagram account, the idea that kept popping into my head was role model. Not that I'm the greatest role model in the world, but there just really aren't any regular men that are just saying, hey, here I am, and I'm just a normal I'm upper middle class. I'm not going to say I'm not trying to be falsely humble. I mean, I've been successful, but I'm not a billionaire or a pro athlete or anything like that. And that was really kind of what I had in mind when I started was man, I just want to be a role model for guys about hey, you can have fun and be married. You can have fun and have kids. It's not this terrible thing that it's made out to be. And I wanted to be a role model for women of some men are just decent men and they're not flashy and they're not anything, and I do feel in a lot of ways, I really try to speak up for so many of the men that I know just in my own personal life that are just good men. They're good husbands and they're good fathers. And so much of the narrative around manhood, there is an element of that that's true, but when that's all you see, it gets out of proportion to, what men really are like. And so I just wanted to stand up really and just be a voice for the good men out there that aren't rich and famous or whatever. And it's just kind of snowballed from there. I've kind of turned into this father figure for so many people, which I find strange in a lot of ways because I'm 39, and so I had a guy reach out to me for coaching or for mentoring, and I don't even do coaching. And he begged me, and I was like, okay, man, and I was like, so tell me what's going on. He's like, well, I just really need somebody that I look up to be a father figure. I'm like, great. How old are you? And he goes, I'm 41. And I'm like, such a weird feeling, But yeah, I mean, I do think there's just this father hunger that I expected from men. I was really surprised by the response from women and how many women have said it's been healing for them just to get an insight into what a regular man is like. I wouldn't say regular, but there's so many men like me that just don't speak up, that they're just quiet or they're just going about their day, and I think it helps women to know that there are decent men out there who really do care, who really will sacrifice for their wives and love them and take care of them and cherish them and aren't going to be authoritarian and all these things that you hear. I do lead, I am masculine and I try to be strong and set the tone for a relationship, but it's not from a standpoint of like entitlement.
Right. That's such a beautiful segue into what I wanted to ask you actually, which is that I'm really curious how you see the role of man, woman, masculine, feminine in a relationship, because the way I've gotten to know you through your writings is you bring a bit of a softness to this, because often in polarity teaching and in all these things, there's like these checklists of like what like a good man needs to be or what feminine energy is. And that feels very constricting. And when I read your work, I feel it's much more softer, much more real life. So I'm really curious actually what your perspective is on this. Like, what do you feel is the role more so for a man and the role more so for a woman?
Well, we could talk about that for an hour. My wife and I did a call like this together for a small group of like a coaching group. It was like 8 women in the group. And that was the first time my wife's ever done an appearance. Mm-hmm. She's super like, I don't want to be in the spotlight. Like she has no desire to be out there in the world. She like, anytime she gets attention, she starts going like this. A turtle. But one of the things she said, she'd never actually told me. I was like, thank you. But she said, it's important to change. It's important to change for each other because no two people just perfectly fit. It's a constant process of refitting yourselves because, you both change. You might both fit perfectly together right now, but you both change over time too. Yeah. So you're like puzzle pieces. You have to keep whittling in them together constantly on both sides to keep making sure you keep fitting. Yeah. It's not a one-time thing. And one of the things she said when I talk about leadership was like, it was always easy for me to change for Ryan because Ryan always changed first. And so that's what I talk when I say leadership. It's not like I'm telling her what to do. I'm leading by if there are things that need to be improved in our relationship, whatever her issues are with me, assuming that they're valid. I'm not just going to be like, just because you don't like that I watch a certain TV show or whatever. And I think it's an important distinction to say like, so the framework that I look at it in marriage is like your individuality is supposed to be subservient to the union of you. And so anything about our individuality that is a detriment to the union, like if it's a corporation, right? Like if you're the owner of a company, you've got 2 employees and one of the employees is doing something that's going to cause the company to go out of business, you have to stop doing that. Yeah. You have to. Now, whether or not I pick my socks up when she wants me to, or take the trash out when she wants me to, is not going to make the corporation go out of business, right? So I think that's the distinction between a lot of men are like, oh, you're simping. And well, there's a difference between me dropping everything for her, every little preference, versus my job is to look at it as a man and say, are there things that I am doing that are detrimental to the corporation that could cause it to go out of business? Am I being angry? Am I being too short-tempered? Am I not being attentive? A whole host of things, right? And so for me, when she had those issues come up that I realized weren't just preferences, but would really detract and cause long-term like resentment, right? That would fester. I always went first. I always said, all right, and there was one particular moment where, and this is probably about 5 or 6 years ago, where I didn't make a big deal or something about Mother's Day or something. And like, for me, I don't even care about Father's Day. Like, I forget when Father's Day is. It's just not remotely on my radar. And she didn't make a big deal about it. And I just remember she was crying and she just said, I've never been a priority. And like, she came from a really broken home and her parents had both been divorced 4 times. And like, she was the oldest and had a younger brother, and her mom was always working 2 or 3 jobs. And like, we'd been married for probably 10 years and I just really never had something about the way she said that just landed for me. Like, wow, real. That's why this is such a big deal for her. It's because nobody's ever made a big deal about her ever. And so I was looking at it selfishly, like, well, since Father's Day isn't a big deal to me, it shouldn't be. Mother's Day shouldn't be.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah.
When she said that, I stopped seeing like my wife and I saw like the little girl, and it just broke my heart that I'd done that. And so from then on, I made a point to make a big deal as much as I could about every little thing and really celebrate her and make a big deal about her. And so when I talk about leadership, that's kind of what I mean. It's not this like, I'm not leading, like you do this and you do this. It's, I'm going to demonstrate the kind of behavior that I know is going to make our union better by going first. And that's leadership, right? I'm going first. And then when I do that, then now she feels safe and she feels, I don't even know. There's a lot of different words there's probably a lot of different psychological reasons that would go into it, but it's like this, well, I mean, he changed for me. So it's only fair that I change for him on the things that matter to him.
I saw you write that in one of your posts. You said men are proactive and women are reactive. And I really loved you phrasing it like that because I can really feel that. It comes from him and then there is a reaction, then there's a softening, then there's like, oh, apparently the ship is going in this direction. Okay.
And I think that goes beyond even relationships. I think women in general biologically are, 1,000 years ago, they were scanning for threats. That's why women can multitask, whereas men are more singularly focused. You've got to be scanning for threats so that you know what to react to. And so I don't think it's not meant to be. Some people came at me in that post as if like it's a negative thing somehow.
No.
Reactive, but it just seems like psychologically it's like a biological thing where women are kind of reading the room and reacting to, even amongst other women. I mean, all the time, I think women are always trying to kind of feel things out and they're reacting to the energy that's being put out. And so as a man, it's your job to put out the kind of energy that allows her to react in a way that aligns with what you need as a man and with what she really truly wants to be as a woman.
I love that. That's so beautiful.
And if I can just touch on what you said about this strict polarity and like the way that I write, part of the reason I write long form is I really think it goes back to, I think it's a really deep cultural issue where like it goes back to education. In school, we were basically given a list of instructions of if you know all this, you'll make an A on the test. So now you see people online like, okay, what are the instructions for a marriage? And it went from, the pickup artist thing in the early 2000s for men. It was like, here are instructions for how to get laid. And then it turned into, now it's the red pill for here are the instructions for red flags with women. And then now a lot of people are doing it with Christianity. Like, oh, now the next thing is Christianity. It's like, if you're just using Christianity as a recipe, a list of instructions, that's not going to work either. Like none of these things are going to work because the real world, there aren't instructions for it. Like I can tell you about what my marriage is like, but your husband is not going to be like me and you aren't going to be like my wife. And so I try to frame things in a way like, here are the bones, but we all have similar skeletons. Like we're all the same as a skeleton, but the flesh and the personality is all different, right? And so I can give you the bones of a structure, but how that developed, how you put the flesh around that is going to be completely unique to you. And there is not going to be a manual for it. You're going to have to do the hard work of thinking and communicating and reflecting and growing yourself. And your partner, your husband is going to have to do the same. And that's why I think so much of this content that we're seeing and consuming is well intended, but it's leading people down a path of frustration because once they run out of instructions, they're like, now what?
Yeah. And I think we can sometimes weaponize polarity. And I have more than enough women that come to me and say, well, my man isn't masculine enough, or he's not leading me, or he's not present enough, or he's not XYZ. And I honor the pain that's underneath that. I fully understand where that's coming from. But that weaponizing of like, here's a checklist that you need to be as a man for me doesn't work. Because there's a human being there. It's not just a man performing man. There's a human being that has his stuff and maybe he's not present with you because he's just not having a great week, whatever it is.
And that's some of the growing together parts where some of it is just a really easy example, people being as this masculine, guy, and I'm not masculine, but mechanically, I'm an idiot. I don't understand how anything works.
My man is the same.
My wife, her dad was a builder. He built houses. She was around that her whole life. And so like, if the dishwasher breaks or the washing machine breaks, like she's the one, like, she's like, will you go to Lowe's with me so these guys will answer my questions?
Right.
And so we'll go to Lowe's and be looking for a part and the guy will start talking to me and I'll be like, bro, you need to talk to her because I don't know anything about this.
Right.
And she's the one that fixes everything, And so it's so easy for a woman to see a page like mine and think like, oh, if I just had a guy like that, it's like, if you actually lived with me, you would realize like, I'm just as flawed as the guy you're with. And there's plenty of things that I'm not as masculine about. Just like you, like, are you always perfectly feminine? Heck no.
Hell no.
Like, and so it's a guideline, and it's a fluid standard, but we're also failing a lot too, and as a man, I think I'm a Christian. And so for me, it goes back to the curse and like the original book of Genesis, where after they ate the fruit, everybody knows what God said to the woman, like, you will be submissive to the man and he will have authority over you. And women hate that, right? And it's not an easy verse to read. If I was a woman, I wouldn't like it either, but people forget what he said to the man afterwards. He was like, life is going to suck. Like, your whole life is going to be spent working, and the ground is going to fight against you, and thorns are going to grow in your crops, and the snake is going to strike at your heel, and you're going to work by the sweat of your brow, and then you'll return to the dust that you came from. So it's not just this thing that was like, oh, slam the women down. It was like, oh no, man, your whole lives are going to suck too. Everything about it is going to suck. And so if you look at that, to me, that makes a lot of sense in terms of, if you look at the tendency in our natures towards men and women, when men aren't doing what they need to be doing, we always become passive. Always. Every minute of the day, just like my wife has told me, like, every minute of the day, she's having to fight against her desire to control.
Right.
It's constant. Well, as a man, I can tell you, every minute of the day, I'm having to fight against passivity. I'm having to fight against, oh, I don't have to do that today. That can wait until. Right. I mean, it is a constant thing. And that's why do you think men look at the content men consume? It's like motivational videos, like Alpha Motivation has like 7 million dudes following them, because if we don't have that, our natural tendency is to become very passive. Right. And it's a constant battle. And as much as women are battling that need to control, and like the things that you write about, where you're like, hey, you've got to soften up. You've got to let things be and not feel like you've got to be the boss babe, and just men have to do the opposite thing. Like, men are where you're trying to get women to be, that's where men start. And we're like, get off your ass and you've got to go be a man. Yeah. And just lay around and play video games all day, or take 3 naps or whatever, right? Like, and every man I know, when you get real honest, is like, yeah, I'm fighting it constantly fighting that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I've never seen that. I so resonate that, and I see that all around me, that it's a fight against passivity. Yeah.
Constantly.
I want to pivot the conversation a little bit. As I was speaking to you before we pressed record, is one of the my story that I'm bringing into this conversation is that I feel very much ready for marriage. I feel ready to become a wife and a mother. And me and my partner are talking about whether we are that for each other, whether that is the time, whether like we're trying to move through that transition consciously, and are having hard conversations around that. And this is also why I'm learning and I'm around the teachings of married people, because I think that's a different kind of frequency and embodiment to be around than somebody who writes a beautifully poetic polarity post, which is also beautiful, but it's very different when it's actually somebody who's been in that for 15,
you want
years.
Tactics. Like, you want practical tactics.
Well, no. I'm curious, first of all, because I have a lot of questions for you, but I'm curious both for men and for women, because I'm sure it's different and it's a different journey to get there. How do you know when you're ready for marriage? Because I think, especially for men, actually, my sense is that is a very specific initiation.
Men aren't going to like this answer. Women probably are going to like this answer. There is no being ready for it, And so it's really not different than any other major commitment, right? Like, if you study military history, we've all heard that phrase, like, no matter what battle plan you put together, it doesn't, as soon as the fight starts, the plan's out the window, right? Like Mike Tyson said, as soon as everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? Like, right. You start a business and you write a whole business plan. And I want to say it was some business, it's not Netflix, it was something like Netflix, that started out intending to do something completely different. And they pivoted. There's a word in business called they pivot, where they realize, like, I thought my product was this, but our customers actually like this other thing. So we're just going to pivot. So my point is, I think a lot of people, they want to feel like they're ready because they're afraid of the risk. And like, when things go off the rails, are we going to be able to make it? Yeah, you are. And so at a certain point, you have to stop planning the battle and just battle and learn how to box, like the Mike Tyson thing. Like, you can only practice boxing for so long until you have to just get in the ring, and you're going to get punched in the mouth. And there's really no other way to get around it. And I say this, and I love my wife. I don't believe in this idea of the one. I believe that it's a set of skills that is learnable. Like, I think outside of a woman that's just completely opposite in my values, right, or a woman that's like schizophrenic or has some sort of serious mental hang up, I think I could be happily married to 80% of the women in the world, because it's a skill set. you learn how to be compatible. My wife and I have been together for so long. Like, I don't even know what's me and what's her anymore, and vice versa. Like, I don't remember what my sense of humor was before I met her. I really don't.
Right.
You laugh at the same things on it. I don't know if that's me. My advice to people is like, as long as the values are there and like they have character,
Yeah.
and as long as they're a committed type of person where they're not just like going to cut and run, as long as they can handle as long as they have perseverance and adversity and character and values, like that's all. Jump in and get punched in the mouth. Y'all are going to fight. You're going to have hard times, but you just have to commit. Like no matter what happens, it's like a tattoo. Like I'm not going to let this break. Our marriage has been broken and I'm like holding all the pieces together like as hard as I can, but you're never going to be ready. And I talk with guys about this who's like their businesses. Like, when am I ready to start my business? I'm like, stop planning and launch. And you'll learn and you'll adapt. And I don't think people give themselves enough credit. Like, I don't know you that well, but you're seemingly intelligent and self-aware and reflective and all those kinds of things. Like, you have all the skills that you need to successfully be married. That doesn't mean you're not going to have seasons where it's rough. And assuming that the man you're with is similar and he's reflective and he's willing to work on himself and y'all are willing. And that's the thing, is you've got to grow together. You've got to really say like, okay, I'm willing to put my own individuality second for the sake of the union, as long as both of us are doing that, right? Like, if only one person's doing it, which is typically what you see, then the other one starts feeling like they're being exploited and they want to leave, right? But as long as both of you are committed to saying, not you are more important than me, but us is more important than me. And she has to say the same thing. We're both partners in a third thing, like a corporation. It says, we are not going to let this thing go out of business. We're not going to let it break. And if that means that our own individuality needs to come in second, or there are certain aspects of our personality that are detrimental, then for the sake of the union, I'm willing to sacrifice those things. But a lot of guys think, I'm not going to change for her. I'm like, I'm not changing for her. I'm changing because I've built my life upon the foundation of this union. And if that foundation breaks, and everything else in my life that matters to me breaks, I'm not walking around just doing whatever she tells me to do. Both of us, I go first, and then I hold her accountable to it too. If she's not pulling her weight, say, hey, no, I've done this. You've asked me to do this. I've done this. I've changed these things. It's not unreasonable for me to expect you to, like, for a long time, she would give me the silent treatment. And we make a joke about how women do this, where it's like, we don't know why you're even mad. You just say walking around ignoring us.
I'm fine.
I'm fine. It's like, and we make a joke out of it. And it's funny for a little while, but after 2 or 3 years, like, she would do it for like 2 or 3 days.
Oh, wow. That's committed. Yeah.
Yeah. She's Latina. So she goes all out, man. Like, she only has one speed. And finally, I was just like, I just lost it. I just went in there. I said, I'm not tolerating this bullshit anymore. Okay. I've changed so many things that you have wanted me to change, and you're still acting like a spoiled 12-year-old. You haven't, the one thing I've asked you to change is don't give me the silent treatment. You can yell at me. You can scream at me. I don't care, but I'm not going to sit in the doghouse for 3 days trying to figure out why you're upset. Grow up, act like a grown ass woman, and tell me what's wrong.
So good.
Yeah.
And
every time she tries to do it, and this is like 10 years ago, she very rarely tries to pull it down, but 2 or 3 times a year, she'll do it. And when she goes in our room, I'll just wait for her to walk in the room, and I'll go shut the door. I said, no, silent treatment ain't happening. Tell me what's wrong. We're not leaving. I'm going to pull my chair out and sit down. So, but I've invested capital to be able to do that by going first on changing so many things that I've done that aren't okay, if that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. I'd like to ask you about, I read one of your posts that was speaking about why men don't commit, and how that was also a shift for you at a certain point, because a lot of men will feel maybe like, when I go into marriage or when I go into a more serious commitment, I will lose a lot of my freedom to do and be and stand where I want to be and to make out of my life whatever I want to make out of it. And you spoke very beautifully about how that feels for you now, how like freedom and fun, and how you're experiencing that now in your marriage. Would you mind sharing a bit about that?
Yeah. On paper, especially if you talk about these traditional roles, like if you look at my wife, marriage has been a great deal for her. She's never had to deal with the stress of having to worry about money. She's never, had to deal with not even just all that goes into like owning a business and like having customers gripe you out all day. And, like it's stressful. She's never had to deal with that. She's never had to worry about where her food's going to come from. Like, she's got a great house. She's got all these great things. And, and try to like spoil her as much as I can, like, but she also works really hard. I mean, we've got 2 kids, we homeschool. And so, but on the surface, it's a really good deal for a lot of women. Like, I'm going to be provided for financially, and I'm going to be protected, and I'm going to, I'm not really going to have to be out in the corporate world. And so, yeah, for women on paper, marriage is a pretty good deal. As a man on paper, if you just write down the pros and cons list, it's really, I can only have sex with one woman ever again. Like, I can't play video games when I want to anymore. Like, the money that I'm busting my ass to make, I have to pay for all of her food. And if she wants a new purse, I got to pay for her. Like, on paper, when you're 20, and I'm talking about from the mind of like a 23-year-old
right,
guy.
Absolutely. That's what we're talking about.
They're kids. It's like, on paper, you're like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
Like, what I can say now is deep down, and I don't know what the corollary is for women. I'd be interested to hear what you might think. But for men, it's like, men need a purpose that's bigger than themselves. But at a certain point, filling that with cars and girls and games and all the rest of that stuff, it's just empty. Like, you need something that you're waking up for that's not about you at all. It's about other people. Yeah. And I think that's the core heart of a man. Like, that's the heart of why, like, the 8-year-old little boy is running around pretending to be the superhero. Like, he wants to help other people. What's the advantage of being a superhero if not in the context of helping other people? So I think a lot of men, when they go through their teenage years and their early adolescence and in their 20s, they forget that our real purpose and our heart is really about other people. I want to rescue other people. I want to save other people. I want to sacrifice for my brothers in the foxhole and war, sacrifice. That's the heart of a man. And it goes back to, you can see it in boyhood. And that's what you find. That's the pros and cons list. Like, there's all these cons of like, yeah, your money's not going to be yours anymore. And your time isn't going to be yours anymore. And your energy is going to be spent in providing and protecting for this woman that you cherish and that you are treating as more precious than you yourself are. My wife to me is more precious than me. I'm going to take a bullet for her in a million years. And I remember when I didn't have books to read. I didn't have podcasts when I was going through this phase. And so I remember I would just come up with stuff to motivate myself. And like, there's this picture I had in my head of like, my wife was at home and she was really young. She was 21 when she had our oldest son, 23 when she had our other son. And so she was just a girl too. And I just remember, like, when I would leave for work, she'd be in the floor playing with the babies and they'd all just be laughing and giggling together, and she's such this pureness, wholeness to it that in me, it's like, I imagine, like, if there are wolves at the door, like, I'm going to strap up my armor. I'm going to grab my sword. I'm not even going to tell them what's going on. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to fight the wolves off because I want to protect that innocence in all 3 of them. And that was just how I motivated myself. This is why I'm waking up early and going and doing this, is for them. So if you list out all those cons, yeah, you can make a list of a whole lot of cons, but on the pros side, it's this giant 1-word response of purpose. Purpose. That is your purpose in your heart from when the time you were a little boy. That's what you've been wanting and that's what you've been looking for. So on the surface, it might not seem like that great of a deal, but you will really find who you are as a man through sanctity of marriage and fatherhood.
Can I share what that's like on how I've experienced that in myself?
Absolutely.
So my mother is no longer with us, but she always used to say to me, don't have children and don't go into marriage until you can handle that your day is no longer about you. And I remember throughout my 20s, I thought, that's never going to happen, right? I need all my energy, all my hours, all my minutes just for me because there's so much going on. And then as I turned 30 and I'm now 34, the shift started happening where it's like, there is space and I want my day to no longer be about me. I figured myself out. I've spent so much time on myself. We're good. Yeah. I want my day to no longer be about me. And we might sound silly. We got a puppy 3 months ago and it was like, finally, I had a purpose to my day that wasn't me. And that was just giving care and safety to this little puppy. And then all of a sudden, there's so much energy started flowing in through me. I felt so much joy for every day.
And until you felt it. Yes. You don't understand how much more rewarding it is to be taking care of someone or something else than it is to worry about yourself.
And I genuinely feel the space now for children. Like I feel a spaciousness to bring children in this world because there's space in my being, there's space in my energy, there's space in my day. There is an opening that wasn't there 10 years ago, when I was 24, that was not there. And now it's naturally opening. And I'm like, oh, okay. I wouldn't maybe call it purpose, but I feel a need for my love to go somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
That's not just me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
And
where
we
you
all reach that point eventually. And that's why I try to teach so many young men, especially like, man, don't waste your 20s and your 30s just chasing fast cars and hot women. Like start building. It's so much better. I'm about to turn 40 and like, my kids will be out of the house when I'm like 45. I'm still gonna be young and I have money. I'll have freedom. I'll be able to go do, me and my wife are going to go travel Europe. We're going to go do all kinds of stuff. My wife's 34. No, sorry. She's 36. She's 36. And so my oldest is about to turn 15. They're about to turn 13 and 15. And so they'll be out of the house in 5 years. So my wife will be 41 and our kids will be out of the house. I'll be 44. She'll be 41 and we'll have money. And like, we're going to go spend 2 weeks going through Europe and South Africa. And like, we're still plenty young enough to go do all kinds of stuff,
I have a few questions for you. So I read one of your posts about what men need from women. I shared this in my stories actually. And there were two things that stood out to me. Two that I read, because I've read many of these kind of lists, and there were two that I really didn't see coming. One especially is you said we have a hard time with joy.
Every man that I've talked to about it, they've said, man, I've never been able to put it into words like that. Even I haven't been able to figure it out. I've noticed that having sons, it's been really interesting because as they've gone through puberty now, they're kind of starting to be that way too. So I don't know if it's a testosterone thing or if it's just a part of like, as a man going out and doing everything that I did for my wife, like you build up scars, man. Like life's hard. And women that have been out in the world have those scars too. Y'all get it.
Yeah.
So for me, like I can't self-generate joy anymore. It's like, so you have like your favorite movie, right? Like you've seen it 100 times. And so it doesn't do anything for you anymore, right? But then like you have somebody that's never seen it and you watch it with them for the first time, and like watching them watch it for the first time is like the closest you can get to seeing it again for the first time. Have you ever had that happen?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like as a man when my wife is joyful. Like that's the closest I can get to it. And a lot of times I'll write about it and women get offended because it's like, it really is like this almost childishness, this girly childishness. And women say, oh, for him to love me, I need to act like a child. I'm like, first of all, you're offended. But like when I see a group of 30 something women at a bar or a restaurant, y'all are all giggling and acting like 15-year-olds. So don't sit there and tell me like when women get together, y'all are all talking business and acting serious. No, you're not. You're goofing off and acting silly and you're singing and dancing and like you're being girly. You're not being like this woman. You're just being girly, right? Like, and that's that femininity that men crave is it's really like that almost childishness, girliness. And to imply that adults are never childish is silly. It's not a pejorative for me to say like, yeah, I like it when my wife acts immature and sings and dances and makes faces at me. Like I come home and she'll just run through the room and say something goofy and then run off and like make me chase her around. That like feeds my soul. And as a man, it's like just being around that. Women often ask like, what do I need to do? I'm like, literally just being around my wife acting that way. It's like my energy is plugged into a phone charger. Like it just restores me. Like she doesn't have to do anything. Like her just being feminine and being around that. Just, oh, I can't wait to go fight more battles today. I don't even know how to explain it other than that. Other than it's just like men can't do that. We don't have that.
No, I've really never seen anybody state it like that, but you're so right. And you're kind of landing for me that I think almost the man brings peace and she brings joy and she brings radiance. And I've noticed in myself that the more I feel him as a bringer of peace, the more joyful I also become. And I also judged it in myself for a long time. I'm so childish sometimes and like giddy and giggly around my man. Is that an issue? And then actually through this work, it's like, no, that's exactly what's happening. The more relaxed, the more giddy I become.
Is it not how you truly want to be though? Like, is that not why you want girls' nights to go just be girly with your friends and not have to be like this grown, responsible? It's nice to just let go and just be girly with your friends, right? Like girls say that they need that. I think all men are asking for is like, just be that way around us too. And here's the thing I think cause women to think that it's not okay is like men don't know how to reciprocate it. And so my wife often thinks she's getting on my nerves because I can't act that way with her. I don't know how to do that, but she's not getting on my nerves at all. I'm laughing. I'm smiling. I'm just like, my response is like, oh my gosh, Lauren. Like one day I came home and she had the Oculus on and like I got the Oculus and I came home and she was just by herself playing this dance Oculus thing that had these lightsabers. And I came home and she was just doing all this stuff. And I just walked in. I was like, I was in a bad mood, but how the hell can I be in a bad mood when I walk in and my wife's at home just like dancing, and she would kill me if I shared that story, but I shared it. So it's out there. Sorry, Lauren.
It's an inspiration,
No,
trust me.
women think that they need to stop doing it because the man annoyed, or they think there's like a list of like, what do I need to do to meet his needs? Like nothing that you can say was words. It's your energy that we can't. That's the polarity. Like you talk about polarity, like that girliness. I remember being 13 and just seeing and really becoming aware of seeing that in other girls. And it's just something that's just like and I see my boys and the way they look at girls now. And it's like, oh no, they get it. And there's just like this allure, like this enchantment of like, that it's just, you can't even put into words that when a man looks at a woman, it's just like this. Oh, like I want to like crawl across nails. It's like, I want that smile. Like,
Yeah, I get that.
I mean, there's just something about it. It was in that same post about the self-generate joy. Like, how do you meet a man's emotional needs? Like, just believe in us. That's it. That's all. You'll meet all of our emotional needs if you just believe in us, even when we don't believe in ourselves. And I think the best example is there is that show called This Is Us. I've seen a lot of reels on Instagram of like, there was a black couple on that show. She would do that with her husband. She would like get in his face and be like, remember who you are. You're my husband and you're boom, 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 And there's a clip in the movie Cinderella Man, which if you haven't seen Cinderella Man, it's a beautiful movie about a lot of these masculine, feminine roles. And it's a wonderful movie. It's a true story. But at the end, before he has a boxing movie, before he has this big fight, his wife shows up and tells him like, you're a kid's hero. You're the champion of my heart. And just like tells him who he is. Like tell him who he is. Believe in him. Tell him who he is. And like, if you do those two things for a man, believe in him and tell him who he is, and just charge us up with that just natural energy that you have as a woman, we will tear walls down with our bare hands for that. We don't need that much.
In that post, you also say something about don't assume our motives.
Yes.
I'd love for you to explain that a little bit, because I think that's where most conflicts come from. We think it means something when he does something.
We're more like, I did a reel about this not long ago, like on a spectrum, okay, between you got women here and you got Labrador retrievers here. Women think that we're like kind of like women. Like we're like almost Labradors. We're Labradors that can talk and we can walk upright. We're not at all like you. Like you say, well, I'm trying to read between the lines. The lines are blank. It's like a book. There's no smaller text that if you look closer in a book, that there's like a hidden words in there. It's like, no, it's just the words. There's space between the lines for a reason. Like, don't assume our motives, because a lot of times we don't even have motives. Like we don't think like women do. Like we often don't think at all. Like I'll get in my truck and I'll get home and I won't even remember getting there. How did I get home?
Yeah, because we're often trying to decode. We're trying to decode, like, what does it mean when you said that? What does it mean when he didn't text back? What does it mean? What does it mean?
And that's, I would tell women, like, you're stressing yourself out. Like, you're absolutely just like stressing yourself out for no reason. I don't remember what it was, but like at one point, it's almost stressful for a man that you read into the lines, read in something so much in terms of like, even in terms of trying to keep us happy. Like you think that everything has a meaning. Yeah. And it's really hard as a man because it feels like I can't even talk. Because like at one point I used to cook, we eat salmon, like that's one of our main meals. And I used to cook it on the grill, and something happened with the grill and she started cooking it. And I said, hey, broil it on top the way that I do, so the top is crisp. The first time she made it, I don't remember what happened, but like 3 months later, she was like, I've been broiling the salmon so much every time. You've never even said anything or whatever. And it's just like, I don't even remember having that conversation. If I even slightly show that I'm upset about something, she feels like she has to change what she's doing. She's like, I completely redid everything about my day to make sure that this was done at this time so you would have it when you needed it. I was like, I didn't ask you to do that. Like 6 months ago, I complained that we ran out of something. And like, she took it so seriously, like she was building her whole week around. Yeah. And I was just like, whoa, honestly, you need to start ignoring me like way more often. Like,
pro tip from today.
Yeah, like for real, like, unless I really sit down and say, I have a big issue with you doing this, I might not even actually mean what I said. That's how much I didn't think about what I said. And I think women have good intentions with that. Like they're trying to please their partner so bad, but you're trying to please us with the wrong stuff. And so she'll be stressed out because all these things that she's trying to please me with, I'm like, why aren't you in a good mood?
Yeah.
She's like, because I did this and you wanted me to do that. I'm like, I would rather you have not done any of that and just been dancing when I got home, because that's what I actually need.
All right. Another question. Why do men sometimes seem selfish?
We are selfish. We are. I think it's something to do with biology. I mean, women in general are more relational. I always tell stories, and to be long-winded, I'll try to keep it short. So my
Go for it.
son wanted a German Shepherd. So we went to
Right.
this German Shepherd breeder. I was asking her, there was one girl puppy like available at the time. And then there were some boy puppies that were going to be available in like 6 weeks from now. So I just asked her, like, what's the difference other than the size, obviously, like what's the difference between it with this breed? And she said, well, the boy dogs they're social and they're comfortable and all that stuff, but they really don't care about the family as much. Like they're out patrolling the perimeter, and like every few minutes they get up and they go check the edges of the territory and make sure there aren't any intruders. And, if there's nothing else going on, then they'll come be part of the family. She said, now the girl dogs, they want to be all up into everything and they're super emotional. And while they're in heat, they need a lot of attention. Like if they get separated from you while they're in heat, they get like diarrhea and like they stressed out, and it's like this major ordeal. And I was like, are you serious? And she said, testosterone and estrogen. I was just like, wow. And this was 7 years before I started writing about any of this stuff on Instagram. I was just like, I think we forget that you look at animalistic behavior. And so I think there is an element of testosterone that it's not selfish. It's focused on directives. And I think a lot of times it can be perceived as selfishness, not paying attention to y'all because I'm thinking about me. I'm thinking about like, I've got a presentation I've got to get done tomorrow. And and in my head, y'all don't see it. Y'all just see me being checked out. But like, I'm going through and thinking like, all right, I need to have this conversation and this conversation. I need to get this done. I got a website to build. And so a lot of but it feels selfish for sure. And so number one, I think women are more relational. Even like in that one anecdote, even the female German Shepherds are more relational. I mean, they're not out patrolling the perimeter. They want to be around the pack. They want to be close to, want a lot of attention. I mean, she said like the female German Shepherds need a lot more attention than the German Shepherds, than the male ones. I'm just like, and this is a woman telling me that like it wasn't even in the context of this conversation, but I do think so much of it has to do with hormones. But women are more relational. And then on top of that, especially once a woman has a child, her whole life my wife we had 2 kids. And so from the time she got pregnant until the time my youngest was old enough to actually take care of himself, maybe 7 or 8 years old, it was like a 10-year time span where not 1 second of the day was she thinking about herself. It was always about our boys. And so men don't have that. Men don't have any kind of initiation into always having to be on guard for only thinking about someone else all day long, every day. And so especially after a woman has had kids, like I have to remind myself, like I have to remind my wife, like, babe, you need to take care of yourself. Like when was the last time you buy yourself any clothes? She's like, I don't know. Like, why don't you go get a massage? Like, she's like, babe, you've got to go get a massage. Your lymphatic system is not draining the way that it needs to drain and all this other stuff. And she's taking care of me. I'm like, babe, you're like drained. You got dark circles under your eyes. Like you just spent all this time worrying about me. Like, why don't you go get a massage? She was like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. And she stopped worrying about me. I'm a big boy. Like I can take care of me. Like you go take care of you. Like go take a bath, go for a walk. I have to remind her of that because she's just so many women, especially moms, they've completely forgotten about themselves completely. And so I think compared to a woman, a man's always I don't think men are selfish. We do a lot of unselfish things, but we're not even close to being as unselfish as women are 20 times more unselfish than men if they're mature. Now, young girls, they're selfish as hell.
Yeah,
but
20s.
Yeah, of course. But once a woman reaches a certain level of awareness and maturity, and especially motherhood, every man in the world is going to be unselfish compared to you.
Yeah.
You can either look at that as something that creates bitterness and resentment, or just realize that is a kind of part of polarity. You're the unselfish one because you have to take care of because I'm singularly focused on I'm going to go hunt down that caribou. All of my energy has to go to that one thing. And you're the one that has to take care of everything else. And that's been part of the reason men are so focused is making money. Women talk about how raising kids is hard or whatever. It's it is hard, but you can work hard and still not make money.
Right.
Making money is more than just hard. If you have a bad day today as a mom and you just put on a movie and like let them veg out, like guys can't do that. Like there's not consequences. Like, yeah, being a mom is a lot of hard work, but there's not a negative consequence if you take a week and just coast. And any mom that's being honest will tell you, like, she has weeks where she just coasts. She's like, here's a grilled cheese. We're going to watch Christmas movies today because mom needs that, you know? And so as a man, like making money is hard. And it's also like, you can try really hard and still fail. So we have to be able to completely focus. Like, if you ever watch nature documentaries, like these predators hunt really hard and still lose the prey a lot. And so as a man, like it takes all of our focus to be able to go out and, especially when we're young, if we don't have money, which was our situation. Like I had no any energy left to do anything other than like, babe, like, do you really want me to wake up and feed the baby at 2 a.m? And us not be able to pay rent because I was out of it in my sales presentation next day? She's like, well, no. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're going to have to take care of everything else. I've got to go make money. So I think some of that is the polarity that nobody really wants to deal with. But like, if you want that scenario where the man is providing and doing a lot of that and the mom is at home and being able to focus on being feminine and not being stressed out and taking care of the babies and all that stuff, like, you have a multitasking brain for a reason. You're well equipped to deal with a lot of these variety of things, right? And so you have to embrace the good sides and the bad sides of that polarity. And that means that, yeah, the man is probably going to be a little more it's going to definitely feel for you like the man is far more selfish. And my wife would say the same thing about me. Yeah. Compared to her, I'm so much more selfish than her. It's not even close. Yeah. And that's me being the most unselfish I can be. Like I try, but it's just not even like my mind doesn't work the way that a woman's mind works, where I'm always thinking of what everybody else is feeling and needing. Like I can't do that and go accomplish my mission like I need to.
This might be a silly example, but we have this puppy, right? And the puppy starts barking and I can be working. I'm working on my business and I'm working at our kitchen table. The puppy starts barking. I deal with that for 3 seconds, go back to that. And at the same time, I'm texting a friend and I'm totally okay. And my man is like, oh my God, this dog is barking. I can't focus in this house at all. And I'm like,
I remember one time.
I didn't get it.
One night I got home from work and I wrote this somewhere. I don't remember which post it was in, but I tell the story all the time. Like I walked in to my house after work and it was like 7:00 at night. And I walked in and my oldest son was climbing on my wife's head, climbing on her head. She was cooking. She was stirring a pot. I'll never forget. She was stirring a pot and talking on the phone at the same time. And I walked into the house and just froze. I was like, how is this happening? Yeah. And like the meal was good. She didn't burn the food. Our kid was okay. I mean, I don't know what happened on the phone call. I'm assuming it went fine. I'm just like, it melted my brain. I was like, there's a lot of women that think, oh, he should just be like me. If he just cared more, he would be like me. Like, I would love to be able to do that. Okay. Yeah. It's like telling me to go dunk a basketball and I run and I jump as high as I can and I don't dunk it. And it's like, well, if you just love me enough, you would dunk it. It's like, no, this is me loving you as much as I'm jumping as high as I can. Yeah. I can still only do one thing at a time. I don't know what to tell you. I'm never going to be a woman. I'm not ever going to be a woman. You've got to let me be me. And we can either complement each other and appreciate our differences, or you can resent me for all the things that you can do that I can't. But that's no different than me like putting 500 pounds on a deadlift in front of you and say, if you love me enough, you just pick it up. You can't do that.
Is this also related to why we perceive them as hot and cold, as kind of on off?
Yes. When we're thinking about you, we're hot.
That's the focus.
As soon as I'm not thinking about you, my wife will text me. And when I was young and stupid, she would text me and I have a super busy day and she'd be like, I miss you. Have you been thinking about me? I'd be like, no, I haven't thought about you for 1 second all day. She'd be so hurt. I haven't had time. Like I can't think about you. And like, I haven't thought about other things while you and I have been talking right now.
Right.
I'm wondering what my kids are up to.
Right.
I'm talking to you. It's me and you. I don't know what my phone has said. I don't know if it's vibrated. And so, yeah, I built something a few years into my marriage in Evernote and I called it my focus board. It's like a vision board. And I would have pictures of her and the boys and different things. If I make an intentional effort to like, especially look at pictures of her, like if I just sit for 5 minutes and go to my phone and look at my favorite, like I have an album of her pictures that are like my favorite pictures. And if I look at at those albums before I go in, I'm going to come in and like, she's going to be like, what's gotten into you? Like, And it's not even like a sexual thing. It's like, I'm just very loving and attentive. Be like, I miss you so much. I love you. You're a great mom and whatever. But if I'm not intentional about doing that, then I'm going to come across as cold. And it's not even like, I would say women think of it as hot and cold. I would say that we call it as hot or off.
Right. That's a good explanation. Yeah.
I'm not cold. I'm not angry at it. Like, it's just off. Like, I've been busy and I haven't taken enough time to like think about you. Like, if I spend 5 minutes thinking about how great my wife is and how much I appreciate her, or looking at pictures and memories I have with her or whatever, then I walk in and I'm just like, I pick her up and I'm like, I love you so much, because I just need a reminder. A lot of times I don't do that. My brain towards her is just off. It's not that it's cold or I'm upset or I'm distant. It's just like, I went to the gym and I was talking on the phone the whole way home with one of my buddies, and I've got 3 phone calls to return. And so I just walked through the kitchen and say, hey, there's nothing, I don't have anything going on with her at all. But I'm sure from her experience, it feels cold. I can't multitask and you're not the task right now.
My man used to work from home and for 2 days in the week. And whenever he was at home, I also worked from home. I would just like constantly just walk over, bring him a cup of coffee, want to hang out, want to hug. And he would just be like stone cold with me. And I'd be like, what's going on? Are you angry with me? Do you not want to hang out with me? And he was like, no, I'm just focused on work.
I can't.
And at 6 p.m., I'm done. And then I'm there. But right now, and now he's literally not working from home anymore, because that dynamic with me is too hard on him. It's too stressful, and for me, it's like the easiest thing in the world.
I've been married for 15 years, and just in like the past 3 or 4 years, I've finally been able to tell my wife. She'll try to talk to me. I'll just be like, I can't.
I can't right now.
Like, hold it. Make a note.
Yeah.
I want to listen to you. You're going to get mad at me either way if you try to talk to me, because I'm in the middle of something else. So you're either going to get mad at me about saying wait, or you're going to get mad at me because I'm not going to hear anything you said. Finally, we've just gotten to the point where she's allowed me to be like, not right now. And just keep a list of notes. And that's what I would tell women. Like, if you have stuff you want to talk to him about, like, keep a list of notes. Instead of texting him, just text it, put it in your notes. And when he gets home, just pull the notes out.
Like,
That's what drives me crazy. It's like, babe, if you want attention, I'll give you an hour of my undivided attention. But what you can't do is, like, if I'm sitting here and I'm watching TV or reading a book or whatever, she'll come in and she'll think of something while she's cooking and come in and be like, hey, we're going to this place on this night and blah, 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 blah. And then jump back in and go cook again. And then 5 minutes later, she'll walk through and be like, have you noticed the garbage needs to get taken out? And then goes in the other room. And it's just like, she comes in here and she's like, it's like getting snipe attacked. It's just like, man. And then she gets mad at me that I don't get it. And it's like, hold up, like, let me close my book and let's sit down and I will give you my undivided attention for an hour, even if it's just about stuff that you just want to talk about. But don't just like jump in with like a sneak attack for 10 seconds. It takes me a full 45 seconds just to realize you're in the room. I was reading my book.
I have a final question for you. And it's related to one of your more vulnerable posts that you wrote. I've read one of your posts that sometimes you also deal with mental health.
Yes.
Like everybody does, by the way. Like everybody does. Yeah. And it was really refreshing to see somebody in your role with more of a role model relationship and on social media to speak about that. It was, I think, for a lot of people, really impactful. I think as a final question for you, how do you navigate that in marriage when one of the two is going through something harder? And that might last a while, right? Because I think what happens a lot is in how we speak about relationships is that, when, I don't know, the other person can't meet your needs, you should move on to the next thing. And this is why I really enjoy speaking to people who are married, because when there's a lifetime commitment, that's a different skill set than like, are you meeting my needs or not? Because I'll find somebody else. So when things get rough, when we can't be the perfect partner, I mean, I've had bouts of depression and anxiety and chronic illness and all of this. I've had a year and a half where I was so sick, and that impacted me mentally, emotionally, and physically, obviously. Well, how do we navigate that in marriage when we were not our best?
I think the whole idea of meeting each other's needs, like, that's not what marriage is for. Like, if you want your needs met, just keep dating around. That's the selfish. Marriage is a decision to create that third union, like I talked about. It's like creation. When you're married, I mean, the foundational answer to your question is, we said it in our vows. It's for better or worse. It's in sickness and health, richer or poorer, until death do us part. And that means something. You vowed there, right? Yeah. That kind of answers the top level question of like not meeting it. I'm not married to get my needs met. I'm married to meet her needs. I'm married to meet my children, to meet my obligations as a father. I'm married as a sacrifice. As a Christian, I'm married to, my marriage is a way, forces me to become a better man. It's meant to edify and sanctify us and make us be more godly, pushes us to elevate each other.
Yeah.
We elevate each other back and forth. As a Christian, that's my view of marriage. It just has nothing to do with me at all. And it's an institution that is meant to glorify God and to help each of us become more sanctified and dying to ourselves and our own needs and our own selfishness, which is the essence of Christianity, is sacrifice and selflessness. Most people don't know that because most people think Christianity is about pointing your finger and judging everybody. But that's not what it's about. As far as how to navigate those things, especially when it comes to depression, so I have two pieces of advice for the people like us that are depressed or that do deal with mental health and depression, is ask for help. The common word. It's like there's some weird energy where every single person that's depressed says the same thing. I don't want to tell anybody else and ask for help because I don't want to be, and they use this specific word, I don't want to be a burden.
Yeah.
I saw my dad go through it. I went through it. I'm talking to 2 or 3 buddies right now that are going through it. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me that this was going on? He said, you're busy and I didn't want to be a burden. And so if you're the one dealing with depression, you have to get out of that lie that you are a burden. Okay. You're not a burden. In a million years, if you're on the receiving end of it, if your husband or boyfriend, fiance, if he was going through depression, would he be a burden and be like, oh, he's such a burden? No, we don't feel that way. But when we're the ones that it's happening to us, there's this voice in our head. It's like, you're a burden. You're not worth it, right? You can't fight it alone. If you could, you wouldn't be depressed in the first place. People sit there and they try to I'm just going to try harder tomorrow. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't
I
work.
see that a lot.
If it was that easy, you wouldn't be depressed. It's like being depressed is like fighting smoke. And so when I was at my worst, there were a couple months and my wife finally set me down. She's like, Ryan, I'm really scared. Like I'm afraid to sell our house. Like we can't keep doing this. Like, I don't know what to do. I was like uncommunicative. Like I was nonverbal. I was having panic attacks constantly. Yeah. And I just set her down and she basically was getting frustrated that I hadn't called anybody and hadn't gone to see the doctor or anything. I just set her down and I remember I was sitting on the side of the bed and she was like on her knees in front of me and I was just bawling. I was like, Lauren, I can't help myself. The thought of picking up the phone, I said, I need you to treat me like a toddler. I will go wherever you want me to go. You can set whatever doctor's appointments you set. Like just take my hand, take me to the car and you go wherever you think I should go. And I do want to get better, but if you're expecting me to fix it, like I don't have it right now. And she stepped up. And that's what I wrote about in that post. Like she stepped up and like she ended up becoming a naturopath. Like she went to all these doctors and nobody could help me. And they kept saying I had trauma. And I'm like, nothing's wrong. Like nothing happened. Like my life was great. I was in great shape physically. I had money. My life, like there was something wrong, body chemistry. And I ended up finding out. My wife ended up having to tell my doctor to test me for a genetic mutation called an MTHFR genetic mutation. It's called the motherfucker genetic mutation. But basically your body only detoxes at like 10% of what a normal person does. And so I had all these toxins built up and it had gotten up into my brain. I had to change my diet. I had to go get like 3 or 4 colonics. I had to sit in the sauna 4 days a week. Like I had to do all this stuff. And all of a sudden the panic attacks were gone and the mental health was gone. But my wife had to figure that out. She's the one that had to tell the doctor about the genetic mutation. And she's the one that had to do all the research. And so when I say in that post that she healed me, like, she's a naturopath now. Like she went to the naturopath and she ended up finding like her calling. Like she's incredibly gifted at it now. But that's for the people that I would say that are the one that isn't struggling. I would say, don't sit back and expect them to help themselves. Jump in. And in my situation, it was my wife rescuing me, right? It's not just the masculine feminine polarity thing, right? It's like that was out the window. That was just like, whoever has to be masculine needs to be masculine right now because it can't be me. And so that's what I would tell people that aren't dealing with the mental health. It's very normal to be like, why won't he just help himself? And if you've never dealt with it, you think that they just don't care. It's like when you're in that kind of space, it's like you jump and your feet just don't leave the ground. It's like you press the gas pedal and the car just doesn't go. Like until you've been there, you don't understand what you need to do. And when you first go tell them, I'll help you, they're going to say no. They're going to say, I don't need your help because they're embarrassed. And they're having this mental battle in their head about how weak they are for not being able to fix themselves and, et cetera, et cetera. I would tell them like, they're going to say, no, I don't need help. They're going to say, I don't want to be a burden. Like you have to keep setting them and say, listen to me. It's not your fault that you're feeling this and you need help. And I'm not taking no for an answer. So stop being prideful. it's okay to be weak right now, especially if it's a man that you're dealing with, so you can tell is depressed. You need to sit down and tell him, like, it is okay if you're weak right now. I'm not going to think less of you, because a lot of men put themselves through so much and wear so much of that heaviness that it breaks them. They get PTSD. They can't express their weakness and they end up committing suicide or becoming alcoholics or whatever, just because of all the things in the world. Nothing is more horrifying to a man than to look at the woman that he loves and say, and I'm weak right now. There is no greater fear. And so as a woman, if you feel like your husband is depressed, he is not going to tell you how much he's hurting because he wants to be your hero. And the last thing he wants is for you to know how weak and scared and helpless he feels. But it will be so healing as a man to have a woman say, I will love you no matter what. It's okay to be weak with me. I know you're trying your best. I'm going to be here, but you can't fix this alone. And you don't have to. I won't think anything less of you. I want to be there. And really love him through that. And I think so many men's hearts would be healed beyond anything women can even imagine, to know that a woman is going to say, like, it's okay to be weak with me. It's okay to fall to pieces. I'll catch you this time. So that's what my wife did for me. And you talk about like loyalty, like wild horses couldn't drag me away from her because she was there for me. Like I fell to pieces and she put me back together. There's nothing any other woman can offer me that I'm interested in that. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of men would be that loyal to any woman that did that. If she has any character at all.
Incredibly moving. I know I feel myself move with that story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so I hope that helps. I mean,
it definitely helps. And it's, I teach this, but now I also could feel it even more deeply. But that when we are so hard with men, which often, all these empowered women do, of like, you need to be there for me, you need to have me, you need to blah, 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 you need to claim me. And there's a hardness to often how we treat men. We don't tend to exactly what you're talking about now, that his biggest fear is to have to say, I'm weak, yes. And that's his biggest fear. Your biggest fear is that your body's not safe, but that's his biggest fear. And to actually have compassion and softness for that part in him and to take care of that part. I often like to play with the vision of, or the visualization of the warrior coming back home from the fight and coming to his tent, and his woman is there to wash his feet and to just sit with him.
But what if the warrior comes home and his best friend got killed?
Yeah, exactly.
And he needs to just break down and weep.
Exactly.
Are you still going to see him as a man? Are you still going to see him as a warrior?
Exactly.
If he comes back and he almost got killed and they lost the battle and he's afraid.
Yes.
Right. Are you still going to respect him as a man if you see him fail and doubt himself, see his best friend die in war and all this stuff? Like, that metaphor I think is great, but in real life, to add an extra layer to that, like as a man, there's not many men that feel like, oh yeah, she'll wash my feet. Can I really just break down and be like, I'm scared after what happened today? Like I almost died, or, like I'm absolutely heartbroken that my business failed. I'm crushed emotionally because there's so many real life failures that we have as men. And it doesn't mean I'm going to be weak forever. And men can definitely take it too far. Like I'm not saying like, men, go cry in front of your wife all the time. But there is that balance of like, if you want a masculine man, we need to be masculine 2 or 3 times a year. Maybe there might be some hard shit that happens where it's like, I don't know the answers. I don't have it all figured out right now. I'm heartbroken that I put so much into this business deal that didn't go through. Or whatever, I'm punched in the gut because I had all these plans that didn't work out. And like, will you still love me and see me as, not just love me, will you still see me as masculine? Will you still admire me? Will you still respect me? Will you still see me as your hero? Even if you know about the failure parts too, and the parts where I share things with you that I might not be proud of, mistakes that I made.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan, for this beautiful hour and a half that I got to receive your wisdom and hear your wisdom. I'm so deeply grateful for all that you've shared and all the guidance that you bring. Thank you. Thank you so much. If people want to follow you, where should they go?
At the Wisdom of Kings on Instagram.
Great name, by the way. Such a good.
Yeah, I was surprised that the Instagram handle was available.
It existed. Yeah. Thanks so much, Ryan. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Sophie.